Hi friends! Today I'm going to be reviewing the book Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. Hi book friends! Welcome back to my channel, T Reads, but you can call me Tia. I love books. I love everything books. I love going to the bookstore. I love buying books. I love searching for books. I love reading books, and I specifically love discussing books. So if you also love everything books, don't forget to subscribe below so you don't miss any of my future videos. So today I'm going to be reviewing the novel Punching the Air by Yusef Salaam and Zoboi. I got this novel for Christmas from a dear friend, and I had my eye on it for some time, but I had no idea until I actually received the book that this entire book is written in verse, aka poetry. Do you see all of that poetry? And also there's like some illustration, so it's visually appealing as well. When I opened this book and started skimming through it, I was very excited when I seen that it was written in poetry. As a writer, I myself have tried to do this. I have tried to write a story entirely in verse, and in my opinion, it's different than your typical poetry book that you find at like chapters or whatever. Poetry books are technically and usually, you know, an author's experiences to the world and to their life, sharing it with you. So it's more personal. But this is more of a story. It's a novel written in poetry, but it is still a story about a fictional character. And did I enjoy it? Yes, I did. I think it's fantastic, and it makes me want to go back to that verse story I was writing and redo it all. So let's get into what this novel is about. It is about a young black boy named Amal. He's actually 16. At the beginning of the novel, he's in court. He is found guilty and sentenced to juvie. We are not given the time length of his stay, but we assume it is pretty long from the way that he is, you know, talking about it. We don't know why he's in juvie right at the beginning of the story. You kind of find out what happened on the fateful night that he ended up getting arrested and what he is guilty of and why he claims to be innocent throughout the entire novel. So the poems are basically, in my opinion, they're like breadcrumbs, and you don't get the full loaf until the very end. Amal is also an artist. He is a poet and a painter, and he draws and writes to cope, to remain sane, to resist. And I just felt like this entire novel was a call to action for the younger generation to revel in their creativity and to use it as a form of protest and to use it as a way to resist oppression and racism. And I really appreciated that. So if you guys have watched the docu-series on Netflix called When They See Us, then you may know who Yusef Salaam is. I never watched that documentary because for me I read this tweet somewhere and it's so relative to what I'm talking about. But like for Black people, watching these kinds of things is like a traumatic thing. So it's not as easy for me to watch that documentary. I've read up about the case, I know a lot about it, but I can't get myself to visually watch it happen. It's just, I know it'll be heartbreaking and I cannot handle it. But if you watched that documentary, you might know that Yusef Salaam is one of the 5 Central Park boys who was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to prison or juvie. And he was also a poet, and from reading some of the acknowledgements, it's revealed that some of the poetry in here is actually his poetry from when he was in juvie, so it creates more of a personal touch to the story. Now, just to get a little bit more on the reviewy side of things, I really enjoyed this story. Like I said, it's really inspiring. It's a really important novel. What I will say about the poetry is that this is a YA novel, aka young adult, so it is for a younger generation, and I'm kind of old. So the poetry for me personally was just a little simple and straightforward. As a creative writing student, I'm very used to reading complicated, dense poetry that, you know, has to be deciphered and you need to read it like 20 times and read it line by line and analyze it and break it down. So this poetry does not need to be necessarily analyzed and broken down. It's, like I said, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The poems are telling a story, and it's more the form of the poems and the line breaks and stuff like that that make it a little bit more complex than, you know, like normal prose. And I'm not dissing it at all or trying to be pretentious. I'm just saying that it was really straightforward, and it works perfectly for the generation that it is for. They won't have to spend too much time with each poem deciphering it, you know, it'll be pretty straightforward, and in that way they'll be able to comprehend and understand the situation that Amal is in. They will also learn a lot without having to spend too much time or be confused by some really complicated metaphor. And of course, Amal is only 16, so I can't really expect his poetry to be as seasoned as I would have, I guess, liked it to have been. What will readers learn in this novel, or learn about? Well, you get to learn about what happened the night he was arrested and how gentrification and racism actually played a huge part of that. We get to learn more about his relationship with his mother and his friends and his relatives, and how they change with his imprisonment, how they grow closer or further apart, which I think is important. What I thought was really important about this novel specifically was the exploration of his art teacher, Miss Rinaldi. And I think it really spoke truth to how the school system fails Black students, and how the school system oppresses and neglects Black students as well. And if you know anything about the school to prison pipeline, this book really speaks to that reality. Amal is a gifted artist, and he ends up going to a prestigious art school, and his art teacher, Miss Rinaldi, is constantly negatively critiquing his work. She ignores his request to learn about Black artists, and she makes it seem like she doesn't feel like he's talented or worthy to be considered an artist. And that makes him feel like giving up. And that's the reality. If your teacher gives up on you, then most likely you will give up on yourself. If your teacher makes you feel like you ain't got what it takes, you're gonna feel like you don't got what it takes. And that is one of the ways that the school system fails Black students. And that is why Black students disproportionately drop out of school compared to white students. It is not because they are not smart or that they don't care about school, but it's because the teachers treat them like they aren't worthy and that they aren't worth their time. And so the students, you know, feel that, and they themselves feel unworthy and just decide to give up. So it's like the teachers don't care about these students' success, so then the students themselves don't care about their success. And that is really revealed in this novel, his relationship to Miss Rinaldi. She also plays a more pivotal role in his imprisonment, which I'm not going to get into because I don't want to spoil it, but her true colors definitely show throughout the novel. And I think a lot of readers, and young readers specifically, will see Amal as imperfect like any other teenager, but as someone who is trying. And I think that's important. He is someone who is trying despite the discrimination, oppression, and racism he experiences in his life. And I think that's true for most Black young people. I mean, most Black people in general, but specifically to the younger generation of Black people in school, and having to try and try even though they're dealing with so much discrimination. Like I said, I think this is a really important novel, and I think a lot of the younger generation and even older generation of readers will be able to become empathetic to Amal, and more importantly to real people in the real world who are like Amal. I also loved the celebration of art in its many forms in this novel. I loved that Amal uses art as a way to resist and protest and celebrate his life and his strength. And I think that a lot of younger readers will feel inspired to do the same with their own art and their own creativity. I think this book is really inspiring. I think it'll inspire a lot of people, and it certainly inspired me. And that's what a novel should do. It should inspire you. And on to the rating. I give this novel a 4.5 out of 5, and it's gonna sound a little harsh, but it's just that, you know, it's for young adults, and obviously the poetry is going to be a little bit more simpler than I would have appreciated, and so that's just a personal taste. I'm not knocking the novel in any way. I just know that I would have enjoyed it a lot more if the poetry itself was just a little bit more complex. But also, I'm older, so that's just what it is. It's still a fantastic novel. It's still an important novel. It's still an inspiring novel, and I think that a lot of people will take a lot from this novel, specifically for the younger generation. They will definitely learn a lot about racism and oppression, and I should say institutionalized and systemic racism, and how the justice system fails young Black men. So yes, I definitely recommend it to everyone. I love that, like I mentioned, I really love the way that they use art to as an expression, how Amal used art as an expression of his pain and his outrage. And I feel like the fact that the novel itself is written in verse is its own way of like using creativity and art to express something in a different way, and I think it worked. Alright, that is it for today. If you have any questions or comments, or if you've read the novel yourself and you want to give your own opinion, please comment below. I love to discuss books. Let's get discussing. And if you enjoy the novel, then don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, until next time, bye. I'm so awkward, I don't know why.